Today on Sagittarian Matters, Trans Santa, tops and bottoms of 2020, highlights, lowlights, and more, with my guests, me and Trans Santa's Kyle Lasky. Stay tuned.
Sagittarian Matters, Sagittarian Matters, what's the matter with you? Sagittarian Matters.
Hello from the Sagittarian Matters social distancing studio in Portland, Oregon. Listeners, I am surrounded by dogs. Producer Ponyo is working the levels with her headphones on. Pocket is part of a Border Collies to podcast program, and he's interning with producer Ponyo. And then friend of the show, Lyriel, is curled in a little ball with her head hidden in her tail. We are limping across the finish line at the end of a very intense year. And I want to say, I'm proud of us. I'm just going to say it. Producer Chris and I have published podcast episodes more or less every week this year. And we, in this year, have crossed the finish line, not the finish line, crossed the 200 episode milestone and are continuing into the sunset, making more episodes for you. So I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank every friend to the show, every guest we had this year, every supporter of Sagittarian Matters, everybody who donated. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. This week, we only have one guest who's here to tell you about an initiative that I would really love for you to support before the year's end, and that's called Trans Santa. It's my friend Kyle. He's part of the team that created Trans Santa, and he's going to tell you what it is, who it's for, and how you can help. After that, the only guest this week is me, your host, Nicole J. Georges, queer, feminist, vegan cartoonist from Portland, Oregon, sometimes living in Los Angeles, California. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Sex and the City. I have some tops and bottoms from Sex and the City, some highlights, lowlights, and I also have my highlights, lowlights, tops and bottoms from 2020. Some of those things are food, some of those things are life experiences, some of those are my favorite lines, Carrie's worst boyfriends, etc., etc. Thank you so much for being with us this year. We look forward to more podcasts next year, and I hope you have a really wonderful and safe holiday. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the show. Trans Santa is a new holiday gifting initiative and campaign supporting trans and non-binary youth. It was started by India Moore, Chase Strangio, and Kyle Lasky. I spoke with Kyle remotely from his home in upstate New York, where he works as a designer and a photographer when he's not busy volunteering as the architect of Trans Santa. Now please enjoy my talk with Chief Trans Santa Officer Kyle Lasky. You're here to talk about something very specific that I asked you about to come on the show to talk about. Something that you're involved in called Trans Santa. Can you tell me what that is?
Yeah.
Or who that is?
Well, yeah. Anybody who, I'll tell you what it is first, and then I'll tell you who it is after. So what it is.
I guess I was just wondering if it was a giant Santa. Okay.
No, the idea is actually that we are all Trans Santas when we participate in this campaign. So that's also the campaign is, it is a big social media campaign. Basically, we put out a call to trans youth under 24 who are in foster care, who are houseless, or who otherwise don't have access and support to have a really nice Christmas and get some gifts and make them feel loved and appreciated and cared for. So we asked them to submit a wish list and ideally a photo of a handwritten letter to Trans Santa, talking about what they are asking for and just a little bit about their circumstances. And we are posting those on Instagram. Each youth gets their own post. They have their letter posted and then their first name and their age and a brief description as the caption. And then there's a link in the bio that's basically like a replicated version of the feed, but each person's image now links directly to their registry. So people are able to go in and say like, oh, I feel connected to this youth for whatever reason. I want to help out this youth. They're asking for a mattress. They're asking for a Lego set. They're asking for like a My Little Pony t-shirt, whatever it is. And they can go purchase it directly for that youth and it will be shipped out to them. So it's different than like donating money to an organization, because it's like a one-to-one interaction where you as an individual are helping out another individual in need. And we thought that like it would be so incredible for the people receiving the gifts, and it is, but it's actually been, a lot of the feedback that we've gotten is that it's so incredible to be a trans Santa, to be able to have that experience of giving directly to somebody that's asking for a little bit of help. It's pretty incredible to see.
It could be really anything. It could be like some kind of cosplay thing. It could be something very functional for their apartments or their house. What kind of responses have you gotten from the youth, from the trans youth, people that have already received gifts or received support from people that they didn't even know existed?
Yeah, it's like heartbreaking in the best way. I mean, some people are making videos of saying thank you, and some people are just sending in notes. But people are saying things like, I've never felt this loved and cared for in my life. People are saying like this, just that like their family doesn't pay attention to them, or they don't have family, or they've been disowned, and all of a sudden there are strangers sending them gifts, and it's like the whole world cares about them, and they haven't experienced that kind of support in a very long time.
What inspired this project?
So my friend India Moore and my friend Chase were talking to each other about wanting to give back to trans youth in need. Specifically, India had their own experience being a trans youth in the foster care system and being overlooked in this sort of like really gross system where certain kids just are skipped because they are queer or trans or bad, air quotes, for in whatever reason the system says. So they wanted to create basically like a toy drive for trans youth. And me, as somebody who builds websites and works with the internet, they asked me to be involved, and I set up the structure for the way that it works.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans to keep this going in any way after the holiday season?
Yeah, we just have to figure out how to survive the rest of this campaign to have the room in our brains to think about that. But we absolutely intend on doing it again next year in a much more organized way. And we are bouncing around ideas right now for what we can do throughout the year to keep the love and support flowing towards people who need it.
Best ways that people, oh my God, every dog is on the bed now. What are the best ways that people can help with this, involved with this, be a Santa? I mean, we've kind of already said, but how can people best be of service in this project, to this project?
Yeah, I mean, we've gotten a lot of attention, so it's really just a matter of maintaining the excitement around buying the gifts. And I haven't seen any dip in that yet. It's really incredible. I mean, within 10 to 15 minutes of a wish list being posted, most of the items are purchased. It's like, it's hard to buy a gift for a trans kid right now. It's really an amazing problem to have. But I want that to continue. You know, we've posted, I think, around 700 wish lists so far, and we have at least that many more. I would say probably twice that many to go before they'll all be posted. So just maintaining that momentum and that excitement. And if you haven't bought a gift yet because you haven't been able to, just keep trying. Try in the wee hours of the morning, or I don't know, but yeah, just buy the gifts. That's the best way.
Great. And they can find it on Instagram at TransSanta.
Yeah.
Kyle, how did you become friends with India?
It's a great question. We met through a mutual love of Fortnite, and we have a trans Fortnite squad.
Oh, wonderful. I was wondering. That was what I had. That's how I had assumed you had met, but I didn't want to make any
Yeah.
assumptions.
No, thanks for just making sure.
Today's episode is brought to you by Zoe Worth, Laura Perry, Emily Helmus, Shoshana Ruth Wechter, Christy Herod, and Joey Soloway. If you would like to support Sagittarian Matters, in particular producer Chris Sutton, please send $5, $5 million, that's your business, via PayPal to hornetleg@gmail.com. Or, this just in, he's got a Venmo. It's Hell Books on Venmo. That's HE double hockey sticks books. Thank you for your support, and we look forward to saying your name on the podcast. Producer Ponyo looks forward to it too. Don't be scared, that's just Ponyo's speaking voice. Hello, listeners. I'm here to talk about Sex in the City. Question before I begin. Should I have a separate Sex in the City recap podcast? Should this be something that's a segment on Sagittarian Matters every week? Should this be a bi-weekly thing? Should this be a separate podcast within the Sagittarian Matters family? Let me know. I'm a huge fan of the show. I love talking about the show. I would love to have guests on to discuss different episodes. And that's all I have to say. I have watched the show many times. I've watched the movies. Yes, both of the movies. I have controversial opinions about both. All right, let's get started with my tops and bottoms from Sex in the City. But before we get to that, just to recap something I mentioned earlier this year about the show, Carrie's worst to best boyfriends. Jack Berger was the worst boyfriend. Then Aiden. Then the jazz guy who Carrie let play her like a stand-up bass while she giggled. I still don't think Petrovsky was that bad. He actually is above the alcoholic who took off all of his clothes and screamed that he was in love with Carrie. And I guess Petrovsky maybe was he her best boyfriend? Who was her best boyfriend? I don't know if Carrie ever had a best boyfriend. Of course, Big is just his own separate podcast episode, but Harry and Steve were obviously the best boyfriends of this series, in my opinion, even though none of them had the misfortune of dating Carrie Bradshaw herself. I think Harry is a dork. That's neither here nor there. I'm basically basing this on how they treated the girls on the show. Smith Jared was a good boyfriend. Was his head full of rocks, or was he just a man of few words? I do not know. But his kind of spacey demeanor is what made me forget about him when I was writing this list. Okay, our tops and bottoms, my tops and bottoms from Sex in the City, in no particular order, just things off the top of my head. Tops, number 10, Carrie pitching a children's book about magic cigarettes to Big's ex-wife in a ploy to meet her. Number 9, Charlotte York trying to get in with power lesbians and then getting busted for being a straight woman and kicked out of their club. I think if this happened in real life, if Charlotte York was trying to go on a vacation with power dykes and they weren't sure about her, I think somebody would have tried to flip her. Don't you think someone would have recruited? Lesbian Avengers recruit. I don't think they would have let her go or kicked her out that quickly. Number 8, I liked Samantha's lesbian lover with the very long ponytail. I liked when they had sex and Samantha was moaning and groaning gratuitously, and her girlfriend was like, Samantha, we're not in a pornography. Because Samantha was so used to playing it up for whatever guy she was around, and sometimes for a VHS or a VCR. And also when Samantha kind of wiggled her fingers at her friends when they were asking her about lesbian sex. I liked that. I didn't mind it. There's other things Samantha did that I did mind. We'll get to that. Number 7, Miranda Hobbs throwing out her neck and being naked on the floor of her apartment bathroom after she threw it out, and Aiden showed up to carry her. So Miranda takes a shower, throws out her back or her neck, is laying on the floor in a fetal position. She calls up Carrie. Carrie says, I'm coming to help you, and then decides she's going to send her boyfriend instead. So her boyfriend shows up, just meaty-fisted Aiden, and picks up naked Miranda, who's going, ah, ah. I liked that episode. I also liked Miranda fishing brownies or cake out of the garbage can to eat. Number 5, the guy who moved to L.A. to become a TV writer, and then when Miranda was at lunch with him, she saw that he just chewed up his food and spit it in a napkin instead of eating it. And she was like, what are you doing? And he was like, What, you think I look this good from eating my food and swallowing? Ha! This is LA. I liked that. You know, I don't like the strategy, but was this from real life, or was this just what New Yorkers think about LA? I don't know. Number 4, when Smith Jerrod is having great success as the absolute hunk, and he's starting to doubt it, and Samantha says, look, first the gays, then the girls. What'd you say? First the girls, then the gays, then everyone else? Is that what it is? Or is it the gays, then the girls? I can't remember. I think it's the girls, then the gays, then everyone else. Please correct me in the comments on Instagram. Number 3, when Miranda thought that her neighbor Blair Underwood was obsessed with her after she broke up with him for Steve, and she sent Steve over there to comfort him because she was like, he's very upset, please be kind. And Steve showed up at Dr. Blair Underwood's apartment and saw that he very much had moved on with a lot of different ladies inside of his apartment. I liked that whole storyline of Miranda being like, I'm sure he's so obsessed with me, please be kind, and he wasn't obsessed with her at all. Number 2. I don't even know if I have a number 2. The moment when Charlotte beat Biggs with her bouquet at Carrie's wedding. There was that moment outside of the wedding in the movie where Charlotte waddled over to him in her very tight dress, and I think that she either just yelled at him or she beat him with her bouquet. I can't remember, but she was so mad and it made me so happy, and it was very much deserved. Okay, my number 1 is when Carrie Bradshaw, after having an affair with Big and breaking up Natasha's marriage, stalked her, found out where she was having lunch, and then sat down across from Natasha to non-consensually make amends. The number 1 part of that is not that move, it's this move. Natasha saying, basically, you've ruined my marriage and now you've ruined my lunch. I'm going to tell you the whole quote right now, and we should all only hope that we get the opportunity to say this. Not that we get cheated on in any way, but just that we get to say this to somebody. She said, yes, I'm sorry about it all. I'm sorry he moved to Paris and fell in love with me. I'm sorry we ever got married. I'm sorry he cheated on me with you, and I'm sorry that I pretended to ignore it for as long as I did. I'm sorry I found you in my apartment, fell on the stairs, and broke my tooth. I'm very sorry that after much painful dental surgery, this tooth is still a different color than this tooth. Finally, I'm very sorry that you felt the need to come down here. Now, not only have you ruined my marriage, you've ruined my lunch. I just think that's like a powerful statement, and it really gave Carrie the what for. Also, like, remember when she had to go to the emergency room because she chipped a tooth? That's something that's never happened to me. Okay, the bottoms of Sex in the City. I only have 6 of them. Number 6, when Carrie went to Big's church, even though he told her not to. Remember when he took his mom to church every week and Carrie's like, can I come? And he said no. And then she came and she made a big scene. She's really bad with boundaries. Number 5, Carrie was a bad girlfriend. I'm sorry, this is vague, but if you know, you know. She's just a bad girlfriend. She just was. And she was then a kind of a bad wife. And I mean bad, like she kissed Aiden in the Middle East in the second movie. Oy. Number 4, Carrie's jokes. Every one of Carrie's jokes are terrible. She's a horrible sense of humor, second only to Taylor Swift as far as bad senses of humor go. Why do I know Taylor Swift has a bad sense of humor? Because she mentions her sense of humor all the time, which makes me know she has a bad sense of humor. Carrie Bradshaw, there is a moment, I think when she's trying to have sex with Berger and she gets drunk and she calls him Mister, she's like, hey, Mister. When she gets drunk and she does things like call men Mister or kind of try to masculinize them, it really falls flat for me. Number 3, there's a time, I think it's in the first movie, where all the girls are talking about sex in front of Lily York, and they talk about sex as in coloring, using that as a euphemism, and Carrie says, oh, when Big colors, he rarely stays inside the lines. Just her thing, like, Big likes to color outside of the lines, way outside the lines, is so gross. That is so gross. I don't know why. I just think her talking about sex is, I feel repulsed by that statement of talking about someone's sex life. I looked this quote up on Yahoo. A question from Yahoo Answers came up that was like, what did Carrie mean? What did she mean when she said Big liked the colors outside the lines? And someone was like, it means that he's sexually good in bed. Thank you for that, Yahoo Answers. Number 2 of the worst things on Sex in the City, anything to do with race. This could be number 1. Literally anything to do with race. When they try, it hurts. And when they don't try, it also hurts. It's just, a real failing of the series as a whole. And number 1, why couldn't Big go to his own wedding? I mean, really. I know I've talked about this on the podcast before, but like, if your anxiety is that huge that it can stop you from doing such a major thing in your own life, don't you think that you would have had some strategies before this moment happened, aside from let me call Carrie and just hear her voice? Like, he doesn't have a friend he can call who's like, hey man, it's going to be okay. Just get out of the car, take the next step. You know, walk into the venue. Carrie's going to be there. Like, nobody was there to help him. Not even the driver, who obviously knows him and has been driving him for a long time. The driver's just like, yeah, sure, I'll just leave. You're wearing a tuxedo and you're at your own wedding, which is literally teeming with people here to see you get married. Yeah, we'll just go. We'll just leave. That seems like a good idea, and that seems like something you're not going to regret. I'm never gonna understand that. If I could talk to somebody who wrote that movie, I would love to know what their motivations were. Like, what do you think, listeners? Anyway, okay. I do want to say another bottom is when Aiden Shaw basically was like, I want to stay home with a bucket of chicken. Rub my belly, baby. You know, it's one thing to be comfortable at home, and it's another thing for Carrie Bradshaw to be linked up with Carrie Bradshaw wearing like a tight mini dress, ready to go clubbing, and her boyfriend having like a bucket of KFC on his stomach, wanting her to just rub it. It could be because I'm a vegetarian. Maybe if he was eating tofu nuggets, I would feel differently. But just, they were very mismatched. It was very like Green Acres, like country mouse, city mouse together. And there's nothing against liking a house in the country. I love a house in the country. But they were very, very, very mismatched. And I don't understand why either of them ever tried. That's my Sex and the City talk for this episode. Berger will always be the worst boyfriend. Petrovsky, I'll always think it was mildly better than a lot of her other boyfriends. And I hope to talk to you more about Sex and the City in 2021. Thanks for listening.
Hi, Sagittarian Matters. This is Beth Pickens, frequent contributor and friend of the pod. I have my own podcast out now wherever you find podcasts called Mind Your Practice. And season 1 is out now. It's a series of short episodes, 5 to 10 minutes, that's meant for artists and creatives who are struggling in all the ways that artists do, particularly in year 2020. So go find it today. I also have the Mind Your Practice Homework Club. And the Homework Club is just what it sounds like. You get monthly homework, a monthly webinar with me, access to a private Instagram for club members, and bonus audio content. It's $12 a month. Price goes up January 2021, so join now. And you can find out more or sign up at mindyourpractice.com.
Today on Sagittarian Matters, doing helium and forgetting if there are side effects. Stay tuned.
Hello, listeners. These are my tops and bottoms of 2020. Tops. In no particular order, just a little bit of an order. Number 10, TikTok coffee, the return of Ticino, and the discovery of the tahini sweet potato. In episode 208, friend of the show Morgan and I tried the New York Times tahini sweet potato as prepared for us by sous chef Kaya Wilson, friend to the show, and it was delicious. I've eaten it at least 7 times since we tried it for the show. TikTok coffee I've had a couple times. Ticino, yeah, I've hit that. Number 9, Milk Run Grocery Delivery in Portland, and County Line Harvest, CSA in Los Angeles. Number 8, Orangutan Jungle School. I'm never going to stop telling you about this show. It's soothing. It's not boring. It's calming yet interesting. It's adorable. It's produced like a reality show like Meerkat Manor, but it is 100 million times cuter in my opinion because it's orphan baby orangutans learning the skills that they need to survive out in the wild, including things like how to be scared of snakes. If you're wondering how cute this show is, just look up Baby Orangutans Learn to Be Afraid of Snakes, and you can thank me later. The host, the narrator's voice is very soothing. The orangutans are doing things like learning to open coconuts. Come on, give me a break. Number 7, Pony Sweat. Pony Sweat is a fiercely non-competitive dance aerobics practice hosted by Amelia Richardson. You can find it online for only $5, and I really appreciate it. Do I wish I was jumping around in person, dancing to Prince and Janet Jackson and the song Feeling Good from My Head to My Shoes? I do. Do I mind doing it at home? It's better than what else I'm doing at home. Number 6, Naomi Ekperigan's Corona Chronicles on Instagram. Naomi Ekperigan is a comedian in Los Angeles from New York. She co-hosts a podcast called Couples Therapy. And since the beginning of the quarantine, she has been keeping an Instagram diary that she has saved up there. She's a woman after my own heart as far as distancing goes. She and her husband or her boyfriend really, really get prepared with their homemade hazmat suits and their very detailed strategic lists when they go into Trader Joe's. And then they get in, they get out, they get $5 million worth of food for the coming winter, and then they complain about every single customer they saw in there. This is the kind of thing I like. Number 4, Samantha Irby's books. Number 5, Samantha Irby's books. Wow, no thank you. We're never meeting in person and meaty. I listen to all these as audible audiobooks or whatever service you would like. I listen to them all as audiobooks. It's really fun listening to her. They're really funny. They're sometimes very deep in addition to being funny, and it makes me feel like she's my friend and I'm hanging out with her. Would I like Samantha Irby to come on the podcast? Yes, I would. Please light a candle for me for that in the coming year, listeners. Number 4, the Pickensian fundraiser. I want to tell you about this really quick. I think we talked about it in episode 198, but it may have been earlier. When the pandemic began, and it seemed like our favorite restaurants were in great peril, which they were, Beth Pickens came up with a fundraiser that then I copied. On Orangutan Jungle School, the orangutans learn by copying. And I, listeners, am nothing more than a primate. And so I copied this. I posted about it, and then other listeners copied and did this in their areas. And I couldn't be more happy and proud. Here's the thing. So Beth was like, all right, there's a need amongst restaurants, and there's a need amongst unhoused Angelinos, frontline workers, essential workers. So she called the restaurant, said, how much would it cost to feed this many people? She called the places. Would you be open to receiving meals? And then she raised money. She took the money she made. She bought meals from the restaurants that were struggling, and then she had them delivered to unhoused Angelinos, frontline workers, and essential workers at a grocery store. I did the same thing. I worked with K-Town for All, Street Watch LA, and it connected me to my community in a time where I felt disconnected and powerless. So I recommend the Pickensian fundraiser. Please check it out on Instagram or episode 198. Number 3, watching Fantastic Fungi. Jibs recommended this in episode 197. It is a movie about fungus, the fungus among us. Fungi are neither plant nor animal. There's something in between. They were here long before humans. They will be here long after humans. And the most interesting thing to me is that trees speak to each other with the help of mycelium and an underground network that extends across the whole world. My recommendation for you, watch this documentary. It is now widely available. And then take a walk if you're in the Pacific Northwest and just check out the mushrooms around you. Just check them out and say, hey, how's it going? I just watched a movie about you. Wonderful. Okay, my number 1s of 2020. This is 2 things that are tied. Both of them, or one of them I talked about on the podcast. Both of them I've talked about a little bit. Finding a baby squirrel, episode 191, and getting married to Capricorn friend to the show, Kaya Wilson. That's from the most recent episode with Beth Pickens. So one thing led to the other. Finding a baby squirrel at the beginning of the pandemic changed my whole pandemic, because instead of thinking about my misery and how intense everything was that was happening in the whole world to people I care about, I actually just had to focus on one thing for a week, which was keeping a tiny orphan baby squirrel alive by feeding it warm goat milk through a baby syringe without aspirating him, and then finding him a new home. That's all I had to do, and I highly recommend it if you get the chance. From that, friend to the show, longtime friend of mine, Capricorn Kaya Wilson, listened to that episode. One thing led to another. We reconnected after 16 years of friendship. And listeners, I married this person. Producer Panya was the ring bearer. We eloped at her parents' farm with 4 people there, distance from each other, all standing outside wearing masks. We also made a space movie with each other via Marco Polo. So those 2 things are my number 1s of 2020. From there, I want to talk to you about something that's a little in between. Was it good? Was it bad? You tell me. During our wedding, our very small elopement, we had a cake. We went to cut the cake, and the only soundtrack to the whole ceremony was her dad's radio that was plugged into a shed. Was not Spotify. It was not a portable speaker. It was a boombox tuned to the local radio station. As we're cutting the cake, the song Mr. Jones by the Counting Crows comes on. So literally the knife is going into the cake and you hear sha-la-la-la-la-la-la, whoa. Was this a blessing or was this a curse? Was this like when people tell you break a leg when you're in the theater, or when Alanis Morissette says like rain on your wedding day? Isn't it ironic? Is that like something so bad that everything can only go up from there? Or are we cursed that now we have that song as our song for all time? You tell me. That happened. Other in-betweeners. Ponyo going blind was a bummer. But then, friend to the show, Kaya, introducing Ponyo to the world of nose work and finding things with her nose was a highlight. The last in-betweener was the show Lost. I started watching this earlier in the year, and I really liked it. But after season 3, it really went downhill. I know this isn't a new concept, but it just seemed like it was full of punching. All it was after season 3 was tons of punching, totally like indecipherable plot lines. And why were so many people on the island just like chugged full of Botox? Where did they get that? They've been on the island for years and years, and there's people with just like the tightest nose job and fillers and Botox. And I'm like, you've been on an island for maybe hundreds of years, it seems like. I don't know, because of the time travel thing, but like, where did you find this stuff? Like, it seems like they're doing Civil War style surgeries, so I can't even understand why your forehead's so smooth. No offense to smooth foreheads. Much respect to them, but I don't understand how you do that on a time traveling island with a smoke monster. Okay, my bottoms of 2020. Ponyo going blind, yes. A doctor telling me for 15 minutes of her time over the phone it was $150. Psych! That is a doctor I'm not seeing anymore. Number 7. Even beginning to think about everyone whose lives were decimated due to the gross negligence of the administration. I can't go into full detail here because that's a different podcast. And Number 6, the fires. Number 5, desperately missing life and things I used to do with my friends and humans like pony sweat, or like interviewing guests in person and getting to sit really close to them so that we can use the same microphone. Number 4, getting weird non-vegan groceries by accident during supermarket sweeps and grocery deliveries. This would be like tater tots that were not vegan because they had completely confusing sour cream. Getting noodles from a restaurant and they're meat noodles that I have to find somebody who eats meat, etc., etc. Number 3, bleaching groceries and having no hand skin left. Remember that? Number 2, going berserk on the streets of Silver Lake yelling at my neighbors. That's episode 195. For people that aren't familiar, I was walking down the street. Many men not wearing masks boxed me in. There was nowhere for me to go, not even the bike lane. So I screamed at my neighbors, "Fuck all of you," and I ran down the street with the cars in a car lane like a child, screaming at them as I ran away. Somebody tweeted about it. His tweet went viral. It got like 250,000 likes. Good for him. And that's it. I just got to freak out on my neighbors. Not so fun for me at the time, which is why it's in the lows of 2020. Number 1, hugging a tree out of desperation and loneliness. After producer Ponyo and I were trapped in the Sagittarian Matters social distancing studios for several months at the beginning of quarantine. My neighbor, friend of the show, Craig, walked into his tiny front yard one day of his apartment and found me just latched on to a scraggly tree, trying to get the feeling of hugging someone besides producer Ponyo during those early months when we didn't know what was what. Whew, that was my low of 2020. I think that's it. Thank you for listening to the show, doing the show, being connected to all of you, trying weird foods, complaining about stuff, hearing from people about how much you like the show or things that you volunteered for or answers to Beth Pickens' questions, etc., has really been a highlight of the year. So I look forward to 2021 and thank you for listening. Sagittarian Matters is produced by Chris Sutton, with assistance by Ponyo Georges. Our theme music is composed by Carolyn Pennypacker Riggs of the band Bouquet. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.
Sagittarian Matters.
Hi, listeners. It's me, Nicole. if you would like to support me and Ponyo, in particular our comics and animal illustrations, go to patreon.com/NicoleJGeorges. And for as little as $2 a month, you can have access to hundreds of pages of otherwise unpublished diary comics. For the price of one cold brew plus tip, you can become an honorary Sagittarian. And for the price of 2 vegan cupcakes or 2 vegan donuts, you can become a Ponyo's Friend Club member, at which point you really start raking in goods, including new buttons. Check it out. Patreon.com/NicoleJGeorges.